So, good evening, everybody. A very, very warm welcome for the today's webinar, and it's a much awaited webinar. Please welcome me in welcoming today's speaker, Rajat Pillai. Is the voice echoing? Or is somebody's background noise on? I think it's the background noise.
Yeah, there is.
Rajat is a coach as well as an acclaimed author. He has so far authored 4 books. His first book was Chandragupta, which was in the year 2011, and it was a national bestseller, translated into regional languages, and rights of its movie were acquired by a global production house. He then ventured into different genres. 2014, 2018, he came up with 2 books, that is Dead Woman Writing and Buddha. His latest has been in January 2022, which was a historical thriller, Harsha. And Rajat, we look forward for your wisdom in today's webinar. So his wisdom today is not going to be limited to books only, but basically art of creating content, which could be used for social media, it could be used for books, it could be also be used for any public presentations or anywhere you want to create a content. So before I hand over to Rajat, as usual, this webinar also incurs CCUs. At the end of the webinar, I'll post the link and kindly submit the form for you to get the CCUs at the end of the webinar. So Rajat, over to you completely.
Thank you, Aishwarya. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to see the number of people who have joined in and the kind of curiosity they have around creating good content. And I hope I'm able to, satisfy everybody and make everybody happy as far as this session is concerned. So I will just quickly share my screen, right? And do let me know if it is visible to you. It's clear. Okay, great. So, quick background about myself. Well, I'll just the books that I've written, and this session is not about me, so I'm just going to take 1 minute and quickly introduce myself. So these are the books that I've written. So I basically write in the historical fiction domain. So Harsha is my latest book. Chandragupta. I've written thrillers as well. This is Dead Woman Writing is a book that I had written. Again, it's a paranormal thriller genre. Some of my books got regionally translated into regional languages. This is Yodha. This is again a historical fiction. So this is what I do. This is what I write. And this session is about taking whatever little I've learned, and I've been in this like for 12 years. So kind of putting that up into one single place, and see if this will be useful for you, right? So proceeding with today's session, and so some tech, and yeah, okay. So starting off with setting the context to this whole thing. Now I'm just put a quote from Margaret Atwood. Atwood is a 2-time Booker winner. What she says is, you are never going to kill storytelling because it's built in the human plan. We come with it. Storytelling is basically a very, very basic element of human nature. This is something which is not detachable from human nature. It's part of it, right? No matter what we do, stories constitute a part of it. Now, when a baby is born, right, the first thing when a baby is there is, of course, it wants food. So there is milk, right? And it needs sleep. What is the third thing, when the baby grows up, other than food, comfort, sleep? What is the next thing that it looks for? What do they tell you? Can you tell me a story, right? It is that basically ingrained in human nature, the whole art of storytelling. That's why I like this quote, because what Margaret says is, it's part of the human plan. You can't remove storytelling from human beings. It's a part of us, right? So this is setting context to why stories are important. Now, coming back to what are we planning to cover in this session? See, storytelling is everywhere, and you can use the concepts that I'm going to talk about in literally anything. For example, if you are having a live interaction or a speech with a group, right, you can use these concepts there. If you're writing a book, now book writing does not essentially mean fiction writing like what I do, right? It can also mean non-fiction, right? Even in those non-fiction books, some of these concepts of storytelling fit properly in, right? Course content, if you're creating educational academic content, course content, or any learning and development related content, even in that, these aspects are going to be useful. Now, if people who have done MBA or marketing, they're very well versed with a book called Philip Kotler. Why is that book so famous and so widespread acceptance to that book around the world? Because of the way that content is created. Every concept is told as a story, right? Like it has a flow to it, right? And that is probably the reason that content sells more than other books. So even for academic or learning and development related post content development, the same concepts are useful. Again, social media content, right now social media is everywhere. So people are creating YouTube videos, Instagram videos, writing stuff there, putting their blogs up. Even in those, the same concepts are applicable, right? So yeah, this is what we are planning to do. And this whole storytelling, content creation thing covers all these aspects, right? Uh, whether it is live interactions, or if you want to write a book, or you want to create any learning and development related content, or even on social media. I will take a pause here. I mean, I hope this is in line with what you're looking for, right? Or if there's something that needs to be added, please do tell me, or keep writing in the chat so I can, probably add that as we go along. So where are we looking for content as far as content is concerned, right? Some of the best content in the world comes from understanding the audience, right? Like, for example, right when I'm talking to you, I need to probably understand what is it that you're looking for. I'll quickly jump on to that. The best content creators are the ones who understand the pulse of their audience, right? And make content which is in line with what they are coming for, right? Not what the presenter wants to present, but what the audience is looking for. That is very important, right? Now, I wrote this book called Dead Woman Writing, right? And this is from personal experience. The main protagonist of that is a woman. It's a paranormal thriller, right? It's a paranormal thriller. The name itself is like that, Dead Woman Writing, right? The protagonist is a woman. I was targeting the women readers in the country when I was trying to sell that book, right? Where did I go wrong? I created a cover which was scary, right? The moment that happened, right, I could sense that the most of my reader turned out to be male readers, while I wanted, female readers in the country to pick up my book. But I made a cover so scary that they did not pick it up. They did not give it even a chance. If I had made a mysterious cover, right, not a scary cover, it would have led me to the correct audience, but I lost the audience in the process because I tried. I did not understand whom I was catering to, or I did not think about that, and I created a cover which did not cater to them, and in effect I lost that audience, right? So when you're creating content, be very sure to understand what your audience is all about, right? And create content according to that. The best content is also created by people who know themselves very well. For example, okay, let me take myself as a case study, right? Yeah. So right. So I don't have the looks or the charm to become a YouTuber or an influencer. So I stay away from that, right? Maybe, as far as speaking and presentation is concerned, not that good. But maybe as far as idea creation is concerned, yeah, I kind of I'm good at it, right? So I chose my medium understanding myself, right? What is it I'm going to create? I'm going to create books. I'm not going to be a YouTuber. I'm not going to be an Instagrammer. I'm going to be a writer, right? So understanding yourself also leads you to the correct type of content that you want to create. So it's basically two things. I understand your audience, understand yourself. Always, it is good to have an idea book, right? Keep a book of all the good ideas that you have, all the bright things that you have, because that is going to be very helpful for you in the long term to create a content. A case here, an example, is Jackie Chan, right? I mean, of course, he's a martial arts superstar around the world. But since the very beginning, since a very young age, whenever he had a good idea, a funny idea, right, he would note it down in a book, right? And he explains it at length in his documentary. And even if there is a fighting thing or a style or something like that, he would note it in an idea book, right? All these ideas that he has accumulated over the years find some place in all his movies. So people end up saying, oh, Jackie Chan, for 30 years you have created, funny movies. You have been relevant. The humor is good. The skills are good. Why? Because he accumulated whatever skills that were, he all these bright ideas that would, and ideas don't come in 1 day or 2 days. It's spread out over a period of time. Every time a good idea comes up, you write it in an idea book, and that will always lead you to good content at some point of time. You will see that, yeah, there is this idea, I want to put it up here, right? And automatically your content becomes enriched. What all are these in the idea book? It's your own life story, things that you have learned from your experience, some anecdotes or quotes that you felt strongly about your own life. You can make it part of your idea book. Any keen observation. I think the best content is created by people who have a keen observation of the environment around them, right? Every time you observe something different, strange, remarkable, write it down in your idea book. It will find its place eventually in something that you are creating. General reading and exploring, of course, opens up your mind, and then you can, have these ideas. Don't, of course, copy your ideas, but when you're reading something or you're exploring something, your mind creates its own content, right? If you come up with something striking, please do that. Put it up in your idea book. That's a good place to park it in. Live every time, look forward to creating new life experiences. The best people who create content, the best people, the best writers, the best bloggers, the best YouTubers. Everybody is the one who has gone and grabbed every life opportunity that they have. If they have to go to a jungle, or if they have to go be in the sea, like Amitabh Ghosh did when he was writing a book, he just lived in a boat for months together to get that experience, right? All of these are enriching things that will find their way into the content you are creating, and your content will have depth and it will be interesting. So please always look forward to life experiences, go and grab them, right? So, and whenever you do that, keep your idea book with you, because that is a place where you note these things down. And don't worry about, what is the relevance of that idea. Someday you will, when you're browsing past that, you will figure out, yeah, this makes sense, and then it'll find its way into your content, right? Like Jackie Chan says, every time I start a movie, I go through the idea book, I figure out certain things. This joke is looking good, or this funny situation is looking good, I put it in my movie, right? That's why even now, after 30-40 years, movies are still bringing up funny content and fresh content and stuff like that. So that's how people stay relevant over a long period of time. Because to be honest, it is with me also. Ideas don't come in like one big burst. It comes maybe after in a month, maybe one good idea. Maybe 6 months one good idea. But note it down, right? And that will find its way into your content, and your content will look more enriched and more deep. Okay. So that is about where the ideas are going to come from. So once you have something to present, I think it's very, very important that your content has the right branding. Like the example that I told you about dead woman writing, it was a bad experience for me, but I did learn a lot of these things from that bad experience of not catering to my customers. Now you look at some of the examples here that I've presented. Once you have a content, package it, name it in such a way so that it is interesting. I was very happy to note that in the beginning of the session, some of the people who joined in, they said that the name and what was written in the description interested them, and they came here to figure out what this is all about. So that is a small victory. In the same way, you look at the stuff here, the book right in the middle, the subtle art, the name itself got a lot of people interested into what this book is all about, right? Many people said the content was not up to the mark, etc., etc., but he got you with the name, right? So that is super important when you are creating content. How do you brand it, how do you name it, comes very important. On the left hand side, you have, is everyone hanging out without me and other concerns. It's a name that resonates with some people, right? And there's a tendency for you to pick it up primarily because of the way it is named, the way it is branded, right? Right hand side again, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Nice, interesting name, right? So in my book also, I got the name right, the dead woman writing, right? Why? So how is a dead woman writing, right? But I got the cover wrong, right? So the whole thing starts with the name and the branding around your content. That is very important, right? That what gets people interested. Now here we are again talking about interesting. So generating people's interest and bringing them towards your content. So that becomes very important, right? So some examples here for reference. We'll move forward. See, basically every content is 3 acts, right? It's like a novel, it's like storytelling, it's like plays are designed, or even in internet content. There are 3 parts to every content that you will create. This is even true about non-fiction, not just about fiction, but even fiction. Non-fiction also, this is true. What does the first act have for any content? Basically, it introduces you to the main entities or the situation that is getting addressed, right? Uh, the whole thing starts with what is this whole thing about, right? You have to address that comes in the first act. Now there are some books, and I wanted to start up with first sentences for some of these books to show you how the author kind of got the people interested in the very beginning. All happy families are alike, but every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. This is the first line of Anna Karenina, right? The author gets you immediately. Yeah, he's talking something in depth, right, about happy families and unhappy families, right? And you get interested in that, right? There is another book which starts off by, "It was a pleasure to burn." That's the first sentence. You immediately got the people there, right? Now, again, I'm going to quote Charles Dickens here. If he says, if you really want to hear about, no, this is not Charles Dickens. This is Catcher in the Rye. If you really want to hear about it, the first thing you will probably want to know is where I was born and what my lousy childhood was like and how my parents were occupied and all before they had me and all that David Copperfield kind of crap. But I don't feel like going into it if you want to know the truth, right? The person or the content creator has established his style here. So it's not about just introducing everybody in the situation. It's about creating your style in the very beginning. Here, the author has automatically set his style, saying, I'm not going to talk about, trashy things and crap. Let's go straight to the point. I want to talk to you about something important, right? He's established it. You establish the style in the very first act. That's the place where you are. Also, if there is anything unbelievable in your content, especially fiction, that's the part that you should address in the first act itself, right? So it's basically about give a background, give the problem statement, give the scenario, or give the whole background of the story that is concerned. And that's what happens in the first act. And establish your style. Okay, now coming to the most important aspect of the first act is called as the hook, right? Now, here I will share an interesting anecdote. This writer, the writer called Dan Brown, right? He's a famous author and known for Da Vinci Code and a whole lot of books, right? Now, one interesting thing about Dan Brown is that he never reads fiction. He writes fiction, but he never reads fiction, or he never sees movies or web series and stuff like that, right? So that is his thing. He reads only non-fiction books, about concepts, about all the dark things he writes about. He kind of researches. He reads only that. So there was this friend of his who told him about this web series called as Breaking Bad, right? And he told him, it's very interesting. Dan Brown said, I don't see all this. Forget it. I'm not going to, waste my time over all of this. So he said, yeah, just watch 30 minutes, man. I'm going to tell you, it's going to blow your mind. You're writing thrillers. These guys have made a thriller. You please see this stuff. So Dan Brown said, no, I don't have 30 minutes. So he said 3 minutes. So Dan Brown said, no, I don't have 3 minutes. I'm not going to give you 3 minutes. So this friend of Dan Brown said 30 seconds. He said, okay, I'll take that. I'll watch it for 30 seconds, right? He started seeing 30 seconds. And Dan Brown himself, in his video tutorial, he says that he started seeing the 30 seconds and he went to 5 seasons and saw the last episode and finished that whole series, right? What just happened? In the beginning of Breaking Bad, all you see is a desert in Albuquerque and a trouser that is flying in the air, right? And a van is rushing through it, right? Inside the van, there is fumes. 2 people are in their boxer shorts. They are wearing masks. And there are 3 dead bodies that are floating at the back of that van, right? And then a police siren comes up. One of the guys crashes that van into a corner, gets out, takes a gun and points it towards that direction and stops, right? So many things happened here. You are ended up wondering, what are these guys doing in the middle of the Albuquerque desert? What are these guys wearing gas masks for? Why are they not wearing clothes? Why are they in boxer shorts? Why is the trouser flying into the air? What are these fumes inside the van? What are those 3 dead bodies in the back, right? And what is this police siren and what are they trying to run away from? What is going on, right? This is called as a hook. When you create content, you start with the hook. That's where you get the guys. You grab onto them. Maybe you explain the things and all later on eventually and stuff like that. But that is the primary thing when you do when you create content. You create a hook. Same way, I would give an example of this book called as Goat Days. This is about a guy in the Middle East, Indian guy stuck in the Middle East. He is in a prison. Every day he's supposed to line up, right, in a line in the prison. One Arab guy comes up and he inspects everybody who's in that line, right? And then at the end of it, he picks up one of the guy and beats up that guy and then takes him back. Now you end up wondering, what is this? Is this a fantasy? Is this real? What is going on? That's how the book starts, right? And you end up wondering, what is happening in this prison? Who's this Arab guy, new Arab guy who comes in every day? Who are these guys in the prison? Why are they standing in the line? You got a hook there. And that is what is important in the first act. Not only establish the main entities or the situation, not just establish your style, talk about the background and the scenario, but get the hook. Get them hooked to what it is. So maybe it's your title, maybe it's the first chapter, but maybe it is the first paragraph. But you are establishing something right there, right? So that's the whole concept of hook. So like Breaking Bad or like the Go Days, start off by establishing that hook. And that's how the first act is one of the most important things when you are creating content. People, readers, viewers, or audiences, the moment they see a style, they get your hook and they understand the background and scenario, they stay there. And that is what is important, right? So that is about the first act. And like a play or like a typical novel, I've kind of divided it into 3 parts. This is the first act and these are the aspects of it. We move forward on how to further make your content interesting, and that is by adding interesting facts and real life anecdotes. Now there is this office that we know about, right? Now if my content pertains to showing or doing a management lesson on that the management should constantly review its decisions and take you know, an understanding of how their decisions are faring in the market and etc., blah blah blah. I go about with this content. Most of the people are going to sleep, right? Instead, I will tell them an example. So there is this office, and this is about a real office that is in Calcutta, where young peon was standing next to the stairs, right? And the person who was narrating the story just went past the government office up and down, and this young chap was standing. He was a peon. He was in his uniform. He was standing there all the time. He went and asked this guy, "What happened? Why are you standing here?" So the guy said, my manager, there was somebody standing here before, and I'm standing here in his replacement. I just joined 1 month back, so I'm standing here. What are you doing here, standing next to the stairs? He says, I don't know, but the guy, just before me, he just retired. He told me to stand here. I stood here, right? So this guy got curious, why is this guy standing here and all? So he went and tried to backtrack to the guy who had retired just the previous month before. So he went to the retired guy's house, and he got his number, called him up, and asked him, what happened, what was going on there. So the guy who retired, he told, my manager, who was in charge of me, he told me, they're doing some renovation work in the office, and the stairs are getting painted, and the stairs railings are getting painted, and all that stuff. And when the painting was going on, many people complained and all, so they made me stand there, so that if somebody keeps their hand on that railing, right, the paint does not get stuck to their hand. And I was supposed to tell guys not to touch that, and I was standing there, warning the guys against that in the staircase, right? And that's how I stood. And when the new guy came in, I told him the same thing, right? Now the point is, the manager made the decision and made the guy stand up, and this guy was standing there, and he, without thinking, transferred it to the next guy. Now the next guy was standing there, telling the guys, he did not even know why he was standing there, but he just stood there, right, doing something which he did not understand because the previous guy told him to do so, right? So this is a real life anecdote. Instead of telling, basically things like, management decisions or whatever, you need to review, or you need to correct yourself at all point of time, see how the effect is and all that. This is an anecdote you can share, right? Because this is something which really happened. People just brainlessly pass the chain of command, and then weird situations happen. That's one way of putting content, right? Always look for interesting anecdotes to put it forward. That's what we get people interested. If I, like I said, if I just go on going blah 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 about management reviews and decisions and stuff like that, people will get bored of it, right? So that's one thing. It's always since childhood, if you remember, all the children's magazines and all, you always used to jump to the trivia sections or did you know sections, because that's what gets people interested, right? Some interesting facts, something like that. Now what, if you read books by Arundhati Roy or Manu Joseph, it's always they are telling fiction, but in between that there are these interesting nuggets of facts that come in, and they get you hooked for a couple of pages only prior, because of those anecdotes getting mentioned, right? So that's it. So for example, Arundhati Roy, I think in one of the books she talks about how Ruafza, the drink called Ruafza, was an Indian drink, and then partition happened, and a part of it went to Pakistan. Then the color here remained red. The color of that changed to green there, and there was some cheating, and between the partners happened in the Pakistan, variant of this particular company, and then it had to dissolve and stuff like that. So she was giving a lot of these, narrating of how things work differently in both these countries by giving that as an example. And instead of that, just saying that, India is like this and Pakistan became like that, and whatever, she used that example to kind of elaborate how things work very differently in both these countries. Not good or bad, but how it is different. But that's an example that got set, right? So when you're creating content, do that. I think a good reference point is Salman Rushdie's interview, because I mean, of course, I don't read him much, but his interviews are very insightful, because every now and then he's quoting things, he's from his experience and stuff like that. Those interviews become very interesting because of these anecdotes that he brings when he's discussing on that. So good content. So even his interviews are very, very good and enriching in that sense, because he brings in those elements, right? Another example I'll give you, right? So I know about this army colonel. His name was Sinha. He was posted in northeast of India, right? And he was known as the best driver in the northeast. So they had their commanding officer of this army battalion, or group, that had come in the Air Force base, and it was night time, and they were supposed to go in a convoy and pick him up, right? So apparently, so this Colonel Sinha was the person who was leading the convoy of jeeps, and there were 7 jeeps behind him, right? And they went there all to the Air Force base. It became very late. Now Sinha hadn't slept at all, in the morning, so he was extremely sleepy, right? But he still, people admired him, and people told him he's the best driver, and he was one of the best person there. So their commanding officer landed, and they welcomed him and stuff like that, and Sinha put him in his own jeep, and the convoy of 7 jeeps at night, midnight, post midnight, they were going through this hilly terrain in the northeast, right? And then what happened is that Sinha was sleepy at that point of time. By mistake, the steering wheel kind of turned in the wrong way, and he went down the slope and going, very steadfast into a ditch. Now, all the other guys who were behind him, the six jeeps behind him, said he's the best driver. Maybe he knows a shortcut, and they followed him down the slope onto the ditch. So, at the well past midnight, all of these jeeps were there in the ditch, and because of a mistake in judgment. So Sinha made the mistake, everybody else made the mistake. Now, I could have taken a lesson on don't follow your leaders blindly, question them, or raise your voice at the right time. This could be my content, but this is the example I give, right? And that gets people interested, right? Okay, they want to hear the story, and maybe the concept is not that interesting. It's about not following leaders blindly, always raising your voice, being free to question leaders and stuff like that. But I'm saying this is the example of somebody following a leader blindly and putting themselves into trouble, right? So this is one of the more interesting ways of creating interesting content, put in real life anecdotes. Moving further, we move to the second act, right? So now, right now, we are right in the middle of our content. So first act is over. We are right now in the middle. This is typically the long and dry stretch, right? The better whenever. So if it's a story, well and good, make it interesting. But if it is not per se, non-fiction type of a content, uh, always structure, split your whatever you want to say into smaller chunks, put it up cohesively, and then sequence it properly. Now, I'm just giving an example. Like if you are somebody who's creating some kind of content about next level leadership, how people go into next level leadership, what are the things that they need to improve upon, and maybe the things that come out there is the ability to listen, being brief in your conversation, empathy, giving security to feeling, making your team feel secure, knowledge upgrade, networking, stuff like that. Now, all these concepts, see, bad content is when you just randomly put that up, right? Good content is when you kind of split it up into smaller chunks, then you cluster it together. For example, in this, you will say, okay, probably listening and brevity while you are communicating is something related to communication. So let me just club it together, right? Empathy and making your team feel secure is maybe something, it has a logical cohesion to each other. Club it up together. Knowledge upgrade and networking, probably something else. So club that together, and then classify into things that you can do in the short term, you can do in the medium term, and then you can do it in the long term, right? So here, what you have done is you're taking random concepts. First, you split it up. Then you put things that are together, in a logical cohesion, and then you give a sequence to it, which was short term, medium term, and long term. So, in spite of your content not being a story, it is following the flow of a story, right? So that's one way of approaching the mid part of your content, which is the second act, right? So you structure and flow it and make it like a story, even if it is not a story that you're telling. Another important point is to keep them intrigued with questions, right? Put some questions in, random things, questions in, so that they still remain hooked, and you tell them that I'm going to answer it in the end, right? Most of you people read Dan Brown's content primarily because at the end of it he will answer everything, right? And that's what keeps you going till the last, to the last act, right? So even in the middle or in the second act, start always throwing some of these questions in, and you tell them there that it is going to come up a little later, but hang on, right? The important thing is to keep them glued there, make them remain hanging to your content. Another thing is be meticulous with research, right? I write historical fiction, right? I can't write things like King Ashoka had a discussion with his rival army general, then he went back, took his bread and mutton curry and ate and went to his bedroom. No, this this is not well researched. I'll have to go back and see what this person was wearing, what exactly he eats, where exactly he sleeps, what does that place look like. And believe me, the more you research and you put it up in your content, it becomes interesting. Now, I come from historical fiction, that's why I do a lot of research. But even in fields that do not require a lot of research, if you do that extra bit, your reader or the person who's viewing you will know that you are sincere towards your work. And when that sincerity comes up, they continue to remain hooked to your work, right? So it is very important to be meticulous with your research. Do a little bit more, but don't show off that research as well, because then people get turned off from your content. Yeah, do a good bit of research and see what is relevant and plug it into your content. So that is one of the important points relevant to the second act. Also, when you're right in the middle of the story, giving some unexpected twists or a surprise concept or something which is drastically different from what they were thinking keeps the people there, right? So think about when you're structuring it that something of a surprise should come right in the middle and keep them glued. And like I said, keep the questions going in the mind of the person who's reading it or viewing your content and stuff like that, and answer it at the last act, right? So that is the these are some of the things that you might want to keep in your mind when you are right in the middle of your act. Next and most important point is sprinkling of humor. Now, this is widely thought to be an art, but I'm pretty bad at it, right? So I did a lot of research on it and trying to understand most of the content that sells has an element of humor attached to it. Now, why are some people funny as compared to others? Maybe because it's not some gift of God. It's because they understand certain things better than other people, right? Now, try to break it down and maybe I'll just quote some examples there to kind of get that clear in your mind. And believe me, this will be useful for you in any content at any point of time in your content if you are looking for these things that I'm just about to speak about, right? Self-deprecating humor, right? So there is there is for humor I will go with these performers and all I've seen over the years, and a lot of self-deprecating stuff sells and people enjoy that when they are going through your content. I was seeing this content by this person who said that, who started off his act by saying that I have a common man's face, right? And I'm sorry for that, so let me get that out of the way. He says I have such a common face that wherever I go, people assume that I'm working there, right? And he stays in Delhi, and he said that he was once in a bar, pub with his friends, and one of the Delhi guys looked at him and said, "Get me 2 beers." So he said, "No, I don't work here." He said, "Okay, I told you now, go and get 2 beers." So he's actually making fun of himself, right? But interesting stuff, right? And he, not just that, he gives you an essence of the place also where it is, where in Delhi people are not. I mean, I say not a stereotypical statement, but people are not very careful with what you are speaking, right? Sometimes. So I mean, he's just giving that. Self-deprecation is one way in which you can bring up a lot of humor into your content. Like, I'm not good at this, or I'm not great at this, but yeah, this is and it creates the interest in the people who are reading or viewing the content. Then there is the human traits, different traits, of a person, and that can always bring in some avenue for you to create kind of funny content or humor. Now, example in point is the Friends series. I think a lot of people have watched Friends, right? A lot of humor goes around the traits of the main characters. Now, I'm sorry for people who do not follow this, but people who follow this will kind of identify with this. Like, for example, Joey is flirtatious, or he's very touchy about his food, right? That's a trait. Chandler is sarcastic, right? That's a trait. Ross is kind of blank or dumb about things at certain moments. That's a trait. Or a Monica is very touchy about cleanliness or keeping things clean. That's a trait. If you go back and watch Friends, you'll figure out that most of the funny moments were about these traits, and how people get touchy about these things, right? And the funny moments are around that. So human traits is also something around which, wherever you see it in your content, just see, is there a play? Can I make this funny because of this trait that I'm seeing in this particular person, actor, character, or whatever it is, right? Or that's one avenue you need to be really looking up into your content to see if you can make it interesting. People being silly and the sarcasm attached with it, right? So people generally give very 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 without thinking kind of remarks and all, and adding sarcasm to it creates funny moments. For example, there are these friends of yours who will meet you in a movie theater, and then they will tell you, "Hey, what are you doing here?" Like, it isn't that obvious, but then you respond back by saying, "No, I came here to have a spiritual moment." Yeah, so you add a bit of sarcasm to it. uh, some lady in high heels just stamped your feet in a bus, and she turns at you and she says, "Did that pain you?" Say, "No, no, 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 not at all. I take a local anesthesia before entering every bus on my legs." Right? Again, people being silly, putting a bit of sarcasm into it makes it a bit of funny, gives it a funny angle to it. The person who's serving in a restaurant coming to you and saying, "Sir, do you want chilled beer?" "No, no, no, I want it hot. Boil it up. Bring it here and let me take the fumes." Right? I'm saying it happens, right? Whenever you're creating content, you have these typical idea of people who just give remarks without thinking. If you add a bit of sarcasm to it, it becomes a funny moment, right? So creating humor might not be as difficult, humorous situations or humorous content, may not be as difficult as it is assumed to be. You just need to look out for some of these points. Ways of the world. So, this is trying to look at whatever content or situation you are creating, right? And looking at it in a very funny angle, right? And seeing if there is something that you can add to it, and a perspective you can give to it, which can make it sound funny. So I was seeing this performer who was talking about security checks and how wasteful these security checks are. Right? He drives into this hotel and stuff like that, and the guard comes up, and he takes that metal pole with the mirror below, and he checks below in the car, just below the car, and then he asks the guy, like, do I look like an 80s villain who will have a bomb fixed to the car below? If I'm a terrorist of a minimum IQ, I would probably put the bomb inside the glove compartment, maybe weld it into it and stuff like that and stuff like. And he gets into trouble because of that, right? He goes into security checks in supermarkets, and the guy kind of squeeze the bag, and he says, if it is a bomb and you squeeze it, won't it blast? And then that guy gets very offended, right? And then he tells him that I mean, you look very frustrated because for 15 years you're looking for a bomb, you didn't get it, your appraisals are stuck because of that, and I really don't know what is your plan B, because if you do find a bomb, you just have a stick in your hand. What are you going to do? Take the stick and throw the bag away? What are you going to do with it, right? He's again approaching it normal mundane things what people are doing, but he is looking at it from a whole different perspective. He also talks about going to the airport with water chestnuts, and these are fruits with sharp edges, right? And he goes into the security check, and the guy sees this water chestnut, and he says, this thing has sharp edges, we will not allow this inside the aircraft. He said, these are fruits, these are water chestnuts. It has sharp edges means what? He says, just think of it. I'm a terrorist. If I really want to like be good at my job, I will like take 2 years of training, right? Martial arts, weapons, chemicals, and it's not like I would wake up, I will go to a grocery shop, buy water chestnuts, and say, yeah, I'm going to hijack a aircraft today, right? That's not what I'm going to do, right? He says, how much of an idiot will I look like if I hijack a plane with water chestnuts? To which the security guard says, how stupid will we look if you manage to hijack a plane with water chestnuts? So they actually gave him a cutter and asked him to trim those sharp edges in the airport to before he's cleared for security inside the aircraft. And he says he does that, and a couple of other passengers came and kept vegetables in front of him because they thought some free service was going on for kind of trimming vegetables and stuff, and fruits. Right. So here we see the example of somebody talking about how angry he is with the whole security setup, but he's kind of given a funny twist to it, right? Everything. He says it's so wasteful. Those metal detectors. He's taken every metal from the periodic table and went past it, and it makes the same sound, which is two, and, and no other sound comes out of it, right? So yeah, normal life, mundane work, doing, but looking at it from a whole different perspective. Another example I would like to mention is about this performer who was talking about being an investment consultant. He was straight out of MBA and made a bank's investment consultant. Right, his name was Sumit. So his manager comes to him and tells him one day that you are going to be an investment consultant. So you, Sumit, you have to go to really rich people and tell them, sir, madam, you have made so much money right now. You have made so much of money, but what you don't know is to how to utilize that money. On the other hand, me, your investment consultant, who has come in an Uber pool, knows how to manage your money better than you. And this is thanks to God's grace and his mother's overconfidence that they made him do the MBA, right? And people actually believed him and they gave him everything. And they asked him, wife's gold is there. What will we do? You give it to me. I'll do something about it. And by the time you know about it, I will move to the next bank, right? So normal life, people doing their normal stuff, but look at the perspective, look at how it is observed, and the content is made interesting, right? If you go through security checks every day, you have investment consultants coming every other day telling you how to make best use of your own money. But you probably need to look at it in a perspective that makes it interesting for the people who are consuming your content, right? So that is another way in which you can be funny. Again, weird comparisons also create for funny moment, right? So I had this performer who was talking about going to a institution where they had written that only for 4,500 rupees in a year, you can give a orphan child, no, not an orphan child, but a child laborer education for 1 year. right? Or a child laborer, education for 1 year for only this much amount. And then he turns to the audience and he says, did you, why do, okay, I'm okay with doing that and I don't have an objection for that as well. But did you ask the child if he needs that education? What if he wants to become the prime minister of the country, right? It's a comparison, right? I know, no, it's a comparison of that child with the prime minister who is not very educated, right? But that weird comparison got a funny moment, right? Same way, there is this person who was talking about, he has darker skin, so his cousins used to make fun of him. They used to tell him, you're dark, go out in the sun, man. You don't need to worry. The sun won't affect you and stuff like that. Now, to which he said, this is melanin in my skin. It's not Teflon, right? Again, a comparison, which was, which created a moment. There was this other person who was talking about his girlfriend being taller by 2 inches as from him, and everybody was making fun of him. To which he said, my mother used to do that when buying my uniform. She always used to say, buy 2 inches bigger than you, and over a period of time, it will be a perfect match for you, right? That's what I'm doing with my girlfriend. Again, a weird comparison, but it led to it creates a funny moment, right? So weird comparisons is one thing that you can look at in your content. Every time you compare something with something totally weird off the charts, it creates interesting content. Exaggeration, of course, you need to use it very sparingly, but every time exaggeration can also create interest in your interesting in your content. So there was this performer who was talking about his parents after he did his 12th standard said, we want to get rid of him, so throw him as far away as possible. So this guy lives in Delhi. They gave him admission to an engineering college in Chennai, near Chennai. And he talks about how miserable his travel was. He had to take a train to Chennai, then he had to take a bus to another place, and then he had to take a small van to reach his college. And his friend asked him, तूने श्रीलंका से MBA किया है क्या, मतलब engineering किया है क्या? So I mean, you've exaggerated. Of course, he did not do his engineering from Sri Lanka, but he said his engineering college was so far away because his parents wanted to keep him as away from his home as, because they were fed up of him and wanted to keep him as away from his home as possible, right? Exaggeration. Same way, there are these auto rickshaw drivers, and typically, that's how they are in India, right? The rickshaw drivers, you want to go to a small distance from, say, Bandra to Andheri, and you ask him, will you go to Andheri? He says, no, 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 no. I take only long distances. And you tell him, okay, from Bandra, let's go to Hyderabad and then come back to Andheri, right? So again, you've exaggerated it, but I'm saying interesting content if you exaggerate it properly. Again, strange situation and embarrassing moments can also, lead to funny situation. Every time you need to, in your content, look for strange situation or embarrassing situation that believe me, makes up for very good reading or very, very good viewing, right? I had this performer who was one day talking about, who was talking about him having a birthmark just below his shoulder on the backside. Now he goes to the doctor, and it is growing in size. So he wanted to show if there is a problem there. The doctor looks at him and says, get out of my clinic. You're too like a bear. He says, you're too hairy. Go and get a vaccine. So this whole content was about this guy who's almost, unnaturally hairy. He goes for a vaccine, and how funny it is that in the end, he's always scared of the pain that is going to accompany him. So in the final moment, so instead of one attendant, he gets two people to do, because enough strength was required, considering. So in the middle, there is this thing about them making a joke about, they would require a grass cutter for it and stuff like that, right? uh, it is again a strange situation, right? And at the end of it, when they finally do it and pull it up, and he has immense pain and he feels that he could see white light, and Lord Yama's buffalo is coming running towards his direction, and his soul is running towards heaven. That's in Hindu mythology. That is how you die, right? And the buffalo tells him, "What are you doing? You gave me a shock." He says, "I was in such a hurry, I forgot about Lord Yamaraj and came rushing towards you, and I saw your soul running towards heaven." Right? So that's how he described it. Again, strange situation. Uh, some of them embarrassing situations, but they lead to good content. Again, last in this case is about, strange and embarrassing situations. Is about this guy who's talking about his girlfriend next to him. He's driving and he's going. She says, say something, and this guy says, I'm driving in traffic, I have nothing, I'm just focusing on that. He says, this is your problem. You don't say anything, you're quietly driving. In the future, I will forget this, because there is no moment getting created, because you're not saying anything. Nothing, there is nothing memorable about this interaction, right? And this is your problem, because you're not creating it, making it memorable by saying something, stuff like that, which in the future I will think back about this. And he gets irritated, he bangs into a pole, and both of them are hospitalized. And then he tells his girlfriend, yeah, now the moment is memorable, right? So this is again a weird situation, strange situation, but I'm saying this makes for interesting viewing, reading, or whatever it is concerned. So humor is probably not as difficult to establish when you are creating content. You might want to, so starting off in the beginning, it can go self-deprecating sometimes. You might want to look at the traits of the people around, make a commentary about it. People generally being silly, you can add sarcasm to it. You can look at things that are happening normally in your the world around you. The power of observation is very important here, right? So you observe it and then you try to give a different take on it. Weird comparisons helps, exaggeration helps, and of course, embarrassing and strange moments, are also interesting content at the end of the day. So that's how humor works. Now, at the end of it comes the last act. It's all moving towards this. So understand that this is the most important part in the end. Always know when to stop, right? So when I am creating content, even for this presentation, I knew what I had to present. And even if it is an hour, I will not go for the complete hour. I will see how far my content goes and stop at that. So if it is 45 minutes, it is 45 minutes. If it is 30 minutes, then it is 30 minutes. Know when to stop, right? Know how much you can stretch your content. At the end of it, always summarize, because people want to know what they spend their time with, all the points that were covered. It leaves them with a good frame of mind. So always your content should summarize in the last act. And always be careful that if at the end of it it's not worth it, it can lead to a lot of bad mouthing. So be very careful that your last act is carries the amount of knowledge and weight that you want to bring to your thing. Otherwise, it will lead to bad publicity. Make it spectacular, right? So in effect, this is it. So many people started off by asking me about take a session on writing about books, right? And fiction books and all. So I thought probably that did not make sense to everybody, but everybody at some point of time want to probably write a non-fiction book about something, right? That's one. Of course, they are constantly creating content when they are going for public speaking, or they are creating any content related to learning and development or for academic purposes and stuff like that, right? So I wanted to create a structure whereby it is useful for everybody, and this whatever points I have presented, right? It makes sense for every type of content that you're doing, right? So summarizing very quickly, right? And this is the example of of writing a novel. I picked it up, but and it stands true for everything. It stands true for literally every type of content that you're creating. Like you see at the bottom, there is act one, act two, and act three. In the beginning, 10% you do the setup, you create the situation, you track the progress, you complicate it, you create more questions around it. That's stage four. You give the final push, and then there is the aftermath, right? So this is how you structure your content. No matter what it is, you break it up into three acts and you create the structure around it. And that's what, so creating something haphazard might go up to a certain point, but it won't go beyond a point, right? So giving that this kind of structure surely helps as far as content creation is concerned. So yeah, I will stop here. I think I have taken in excess of 55 minutes now. I would just throw it open for questions.
Thank you so much, Rajat. It was so wonderful. It was very, very captivating, and I wish it could continue for more and more. It was very nice. And we are open for questions. There's a question from Bhavna. Any particular way to research? Mine goes out of bounds.
Any particular way to research? See, on the internet, a lot of stuff can be real or fake, right? I think buying books around your topics helps, because it goes through a certain level of filtering by the author, by the publisher, before it comes to you, right? So don't go with research everything. Internet is good, right? But always buy authentic books around your topic. I think that's a good starting point as far as your research is concerned.
Thank you so much. I have a question since I'm awaiting questions from others. Just we've been hearing about creating a hook, give the unexpected twist and turns. But that's an art, right? I mean, not everybody can write. Like, for example, my own self, if I start writing, I can write well, but it was very boring. It was very monotonous. Yeah. So how do you have that, or how do you develop that habit of creating a hook? Or even, for example, you have many life experiences, you have observations, but not necessarily you are able to grab those observations and capture them into something meaty, something substantial. So how do you develop that particular habit of grabbing your real life experiences and observations as well?
So first things first, I think let's not approach it with pre-notions that I'm capable of doing this or I'm not capable of doing this. I think the first proof of the pudding is to create shorter versions of whatever you want to create, right? So it's not about creating a whole book, but write much shorter. Maybe start with a small paragraph and then do a test run. Run it between friends or people who trust, and probably that is a test run that you need to do. Then you can gradually increase in size, right? All the people who are YouTubers or Instagrammers or writers for that matter, even Salman Rushdie, he started off writing short stories because They wanted to get a feel of doing something on a much smaller scale and figuring it out and running it with a test audience and then gradually evolving it and increasing the scope of their activity, right? So that's probably a better way of approaching this rather than saying not possible.
Okay. So Namita is asking, Rajat, any suggestion on creating a hook when one is creating short content for social media?
Any content, see, I think in the social media, I think a lot of things come in the hook. So if you are in YouTube or Instagram, that image is a clickbait, right? That image that you give for your content itself is something that can get people interested. So that is one thing that can be useful in social media. Same way how you word it, the title that you use for your YouTube video or your content or whatever, the title is an immediate bait. And remember, if they are clicking on your video or content, is the first 2-3 lines or the first 2-3 seconds that is going to make or break a video. So be very careful about choosing that. So that's where the hook comes, right? So it's branding, it's name, and it's the initial part of the content.
Okay. Any other questions? So everybody is complimenting, and trust me, it was really an awesome webinar, Rajat. Loved and learned a lot in the webinar today. Is there any question anybody would want to ask and unmute and ask as well? Want to understand how to create YouTube content?
For YouTube content, I think there are a lot of tutorials around it, but basically the thing is understand a theme. What is it that you are best at, right? Create a theme around it, and then, like I told in the middle of my presentation, break it up into whatever theme that you present. So there are some people who are interested in travel related YouTube content. Some people are talking about psychological analysis. Some people are into mentalism, for that matter. Think about the theme that you want to approach, right? Start off with shorter videos. Break that main topic into smaller content, which will sustain you for a long period of time. So you will come up with multiple videos in a series. Pick up the most interesting one in the beginning, the smaller ones in the beginning. Do a test run. Understand from the experience side, right? In the beginning, be careful about the image you use, the name you use, the branding, the first couple of seconds, then create a series around it, right? And most of the YouTubers have gone around that. Of course, later on they diversify, but the approach should be something like this. First, figure out what is your strength, right? Like again, going back to the second or third slide in my presentation, understand what is your audience, understand who you are, how can you cater to that audience, what is the most relevant thing, right? And create a theme around it, and then break it up.
Rajat wanted to check here, say if mine is well-being and if I want to talk about stress and maybe two, three other topics, maybe some other topics as well. So you're saying take a sub point and then subtopic and then create a series around it and then take the other subtopics.
I will probably approach it a little bit more, I'm saying well-being is something which everybody is likely to copy. Why don't you create well-being around in the Middle Ages, right? Something very specific, right? Instead of handling people and crisis, you say midlife crisis. Be very specific, right? With the theme. Then again, stress. I'm just thinking on the fly, but I'm saying what are the various reasons for stress that can come in? Make it into smaller chunks, right? Make small videos about it, right? Family-related stress. I'm just giving an example. Work-related stress, travel-related stress. How can you make it? I'm just giving it as an example. So not just the main theme, which here in your case is well-being, probably would want to tweak it and make it more interesting. Maybe, kind of align to a very, very specific group, audience, right? And then your content also being very specific after breaking it down, and then target it to the people concerned.
Right. Excellent. Jay wants to ask a question. One last question we'll take from Jay. Yes,
thanks, Rajat, for an amazing presentation. My question is, how important is anchoring to a relative event important to a storyline? For example, I ran fast today versus if I would have ran the same timing in 1960, I would have been the fastest man on earth. So suddenly people start realizing that, oh, okay, I mean, this is suddenly a story in a moment, which is like, okay, maybe, I see a tall building, but okay, this is taller than the tallest building in Mumbai. That's it. So how important is that anchor of relativity in storytelling?
See, actually, so couple of things. I'm not sure whether I understood your question properly or something. But again, being relevant to the current event or current scheme of things is very important for storytelling, especially in the case of things like YouTube videos and all, right? For example, I'm telling you this Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard, the case is going on, right? Litigation is going on. People are following that up. There are things that are falling out of it. If you create content that is relevant for that moment, right? It gets a lot of push like that. Same way, probably building upon your example, if you say the 1960s, if something like this happened, this would have been unbelievable, right? People would, the same jury who's probably going to vote in support of one party might have done the other way around if it was in the 60s, right? I mean, just again, I'm saying things that are happening around you, watching it with a keen eye, then maybe moving it to the future, maybe moving it to the past, maybe moving it to a separate country. You say specifically, if this happened in so and so culture, will that be acceptable, right? So it's again interesting content is when you put that twist to it. Whether take it in the past, take it in the future, take it to a separate geography, role reversal, stuff like that. I hope I answered the question.
All right, great. So thank you so much, everybody, and thank you so much, Rajat. It was such a wonderful webinar. I have no words to describe. Yeah? And I put the link for CCUs in the chat box. Kindly fill up the form and submit. I will do it once again so that I can issue your CCUs at the end of the webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure interacting with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.